Hi, and welcome to Ask the Manager. We have our new senator with us tonight, Senator Michael Moore, and we're very happy to have you with us, Senator. And you're filling some big shoes, and with Senator Augustus now retired from the office, I'm sure you'll do a good job.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight, and you have some big shoes to fill.
Yes, you do.
And I look forward to the challenges of filling those. So.
And we've learned already, because you've already been very cooperative with the town of Shrewsbury in a few ways, and so we know that we're going to have a good working relationship with you, and so we look forward to it.
Certainly do.
Thank you, and likewise.
So I just want to start by saying you've already filed bills already, you know, what, in your first few weeks in office?
Yes.
Is that typical?
Well, as far as I know, it is. Well, I guess years ago, the filing deadline was before newly elected officials took office. As I know of this year, the filing deadline was January 14th, and then they had a new software system in, and there were some problems with that, so they actually extended it another week. So, yes, we had about 10 days, 17 days to file legislation. Luckily, I was able to bring some staff on early. Actually, one individual you met over the weekend that appeared at your legislative day for me left his position, and he actually volunteered, came in on his own time, and helped me get help myself and my chief of staff get the legislation ready and prepare things. So
good, excellent.
It went well. Yeah.
Thank you. Good. Well, we appreciate what you've done so far.
Oh no, thank you.
And we also see an excellent relationship develop between you and Representative Plato. That was certainly very important to us. The relationship that Senator Augustus and Representative Plato had was just outstanding, even though they're from different parties. And
you've got to cross party lines.
Yeah,
you can't
very, very well. Yeah.
You can't be partisan in this. I mean, we got a lot to accomplish, a lot of challenges, so you got to work with everyone. So, and as the meeting that I think that you sponsored for the wastewater treatment plant.
That's right. That was a great meeting too. Yes, I'm telling you, and Senator McGovern, Congressman McGovern and his staff, have been outstanding. They've been all over that, and we really appreciate the work that's been done in that regard by all the legislators, yourself, Representative Plato, and Congressman McGovern, and helping us navigate the waters, no pun intended, of that SRF fund. We appreciate that very much.
You're welcome. I'll just hope the stimulus gets, we get some stimulus funding out of it for the project.
I hope I get some stimulus.
Okay, so before we jump through the whole hour's worth of topics, I just wanted to start with, you mentioned your chief of staff. Who is that?
Her name is Amy Frigiletti. She used to work in Chairman Rogers' office in the House of Representatives, and then she actually formerly worked for Sheriff Lotus in the State Senate. So she's got an understanding of the district, which was very important to me. So I wanted to make sure when people from the area are calling, that someone knew where if they called with an issue, that they knew the district and what the problems are. I also hired two people from Shrewsbury, Tom O'Neill and Jason Palitz. Jason's actually a co-op student. He's going to Northeastern right now, and he's doing an excellent job. Actually, they both are. So they have a good understanding of Shrewsbury and the district. I've also hired Peter Antonellis. He's actually from the Boston area. He formerly worked for Representative Michael Roderick, and he handled all the biotech for Representative Roderick. So
that's good for us with the connection with UMass. That's excellent.
Yes, it really is. And I think I'm forgetting one person.
Probably someone very important. I don't know. I'm just.
Let's see. We've got Amy, Peter. A woman named Shelley McNeil. She formerly worked for Senator Pam Reeser. She was a former chief of staff.
Marlboro.
Yes. Yep. She was a former chief of staff. She left that position, and she was actually the director of the Women's Caucus. It was a joint committee between the House and the Senate. And with the budget cuts coming up that the legislature did impose upon herself, Senator Reeser actually steered her my way. And so that was another great appointment that I was able to make. So I'm actually very happy with the staff.
Good. So. Now you just mentioned budget cuts. How did you vote on the raise for the legislature?
Well, as everyone, no one voted. There was no vote required. But I did decline the pay raise. Back in '98, it was a referendum or constitutional vote that took place. So the pay raise was an automatic that every 2 years is calculated based on, I think, on the median salary of for the Commonwealth. Obviously, getting sworn in on January 7th. it's pretty hard to go on January 8th to say I deserve a 5% pay raise. And I am going to be, over the next 2 years, with the economy the way it is, asking unions, state employees, other advocacy groups or programs to make sacrifices. So if I'm going to ask them to make sacrifices, how do I not make a sacrifice? You're elected to lead, so if you're going to lead, I think you would lead by example. So it was actually a pretty easy decision to make.
That's interesting. Now, just to get back to your bills, we'll let you talk in a minute.
Oh, good.
Just to get back to your bills, what did you file? How many bills did you file?
Well, between filing and co-sponsoring, I think we've got about 40 different bills.
Really?
Yeah. So
what ones, like, at the top of your list?
well, actually, one that we're signing on to today was it's a economic development piece, and it establishes job credits, historical credits. It goes along with the gateway cities programs. It actually, there's two pieces of legislation I signed on to deal with gateways. One of them was Representative Canavan. Actually, right now you can get up to $50 million in tax credits for the gateway program. His bill would extend it to $80 million. The bill I signed on today with Cabral and Bonacotti actually would make it from $50 million to an unlimited amount based on the city. So, and there's also the programs for establishing historical credits, job creation credits. So we signed on to that today. I'm also, the Senate proposed a transportation reorg bill about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, where they want to merge all the mass transit, the Mass Turnpike, Mass Highway, the Tobin Bridge, MBTA, and one aspect is taking the Tobin Bridge, removing it from Massport. Massport runs at the airport. Why would that be? Why would they be running a bridge or a roadway infrastructure? And it would be creating what's the Mass Surface Transportation Board. And this would actually consolidate all the administrative functions under one entity. And so now you'd have the debt from the MBTA, the debt from the Mass Turnpike, hopefully, and the revenue projections that they have looked at estimate that we could probably save $6 billion over 5 years.
Maybe that could come to cities and towns, because we're going to be needing it. I got a smile out of them.
That's right.
I've also signed on some public safety related bills. Today I signed on to one regarding sex offenders. There's a loophole where the sex offender gets out and he's living in the community. And if he goes to change his name, it's not required to re-register.
Really?
So I've signed on to that. I've also signed on to with the chairman of the Public Safety Committee, Chairman Timilty. The marijuana question just passed. Well, the legislation will address a lot of the loopholes that wasn't addressed when that was passed. As one example is the hashish, where it's the chemical compound is basically the same as marijuana, but it's a much stronger potency. Well, this would actually bring that back in as a criminal offense. I filed I'm the lead sponsor on a bill for nurses, where if a nurse is assaulted, the law currently already exists for emergency medical technicians, but it doesn't exist for nurses. We're trying to add them to this, where if they're assaulted in the performance of their duty, the person will receive a minimum of 90 days in prison. I signed on to 3 home rule.
He's got my interest on that one.
Well,
I've seen
I thought of that on the way here. So, I spoke to Jim O'Day, and the city of Worcester, myself, and I think Senator Harry Chandler have signed on to a home rule petition. There's 3 pieces of legislation there that's trying to help with the mortgage foreclosure crisis. Prolong. One is a judicial review piece, where before a mortgage or someone's house can be foreclosed, you would have to the lender would have to take you to court. So to make sure that you're not a victim of predatory loans. Then another would be the predatory loan statute, where you would have the right, if you can't make the payment, to make renegotiate or make a minimal payment to keep you in there for a certain period of time. And trying to think, what else do I have for you? I signed on to RTA, Regional Transportation Authority. I actually joined the caucus for that and signed up to legislation for that, where we would try to front load the bonding of that to try to help with the debt burden there. So those are some of the pieces.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to do for cities and towns? Specifically Shrewsbury.
Well, one thing.
I mean, financial.
Even before I was sworn in, working with Representative Polito, McGovern, Congressman McGovern, and the town manager, we were working, putting that package together for the stimulus, which hopefully, if we can get it, it's $50 million worth of.
60, well, 60, but we're getting good estimates now. You know, when we bid that project, we bid it at the absolute worst time. We bid it last May, you know, the May area of 2008, and that was the worst week to be bidding anything. And we're now getting indications from contractors that pricing has come down considerably. So we only be talking about 50 million, which is still considerably more than the 27 or 28 million.
Now, is that your 58%?
No, we would then own 57% of that.
Okay.
Now explain that a little further.
Again, it's the upgrade to the Westboro treatment facility. We share into the cost of running that facility based upon the proportion of flow that we send there, and we send approximately 57% of the flow. So we pay 57% of the bill.
And how would that, the town part of that be paid? Through
That's
sewer
paid
bill?
through sewer use, yes.
Yep.
Actually, another portion that we were working on with the Worcester Business Development Corp. is the Syntec Park property.
The Syntec.
Trying to put a road in.
Right.
So
Syntec East.
Yeah, they actually applied. They called us and they applied, asked us to apply for the stimulus package for the cost of that road. And they're estimating that if we can get that funded and the infrastructure put in, that could generate anywhere from 600 to 700 jobs.
And not only would that bring jobs, it would bring taxes,
That's correct.
taxpayer to the
Yes,
town, which
right.
we need for revenue.
Yes.
And we've been trying to get for about a year or two.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, all right, we're struggling with, you know, like Governor Patrick's budget proposal and how that impacts Shrewsbury and the decreased funding. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Well, I think that the big question is going to be is how much assistance will cities and towns really be able to expect from the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth's got issues of its own to deal with, health care costs, pension costs, dealing with the, you know, all the very complicated systems that are operated by, by the Commonwealth, providing services across the you know, the entire 351 cities and towns. I'm in for a 10% reduction on state. That's what my budget filing last Friday. I took 10% of our current 2010, took 10% of that, and that's what I have filed. Governor has filed his initial House 1 showing our reduction being just under $1 million. I think my number, I'm hoping that my number is the bottom. Any thoughts about where you think we're going to end up as far as actual reductions?
Well, I was going to tell you this. When the early part of December, they had an orientation training for all the newly elected senators and state representatives. And one portion of the 3-day program of the orientation was a budget overview. And at that point, they were telling us maybe expect another $1 billion to $1.2 billion, which we had to do the other about 2 weeks ago. And that maybe for the following next fiscal year, 2010, to look at maybe a $2 billion cut. Well, now since then it went from $2 billion to it's actually a $3 to $3.5 billion. The problem we're having is that every time they meet and they discuss revenues, the revenues keep dropping. So even as far as local aid, to try to give the towns, to give the managers a definitive figure, it's right now it's difficult in the amount. Every 2 weeks, the administration has now required DOR. Every 2 weeks now they have to give an update on the revenues to try to keep the most up-to-date information coming in. So it's hard to give a definitive figure. So I really don't know.
Okay.
You know, I don't want to mislead anyone and give you a wrong figure, but every time we meet, 2 weeks ago.
It's getting worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
The new speaker, DeLeo, told us it was going to be 3.5. You know, he's the chairman of the Ways and Means in the House. Right. The last we had heard it was for $3 billion. So, and you don't know what's going to happen with the meals tax. I just had the restaurant industry meeting with me today, opposing any sort of increase in the meals tax.
What do you think of that? And just for the public, explain what that means.
Well, right now the governor has proposed an increase in the establishing a meals tax, where a 1% tax on all meals that would be assessed by the state which would go to the state, and then also a local option for the towns where they could assess a 1% tax also. My problem with that is if it's done throughout the standard one, the state gets the 1%. The town of Shrewsbury, you get 10 restaurants. The next town over, I don't say Westboro, which I know has many restaurants, but say they have 2. When the state comes to disperse the revenues from that meals tax, are you going to get, will you get the fair share that you're contributing, your business is contributing, or will Westboro get, what's the formula going to be for that? If you have a town that has 1 restaurant, they're not really contributing much into the tax base, new tax revenues, where you could have an abutting town contributing, 10 times or 100 times the amount that they're contributing. So what's the formula going to be for getting that revenues back to the towns?
But that's really no different than a sales tax, though. You got the town of Rentham, for instance, that has the Rentham outlets, right? So, they probably generate a sales tax out of that community that probably is greater than the total Rentham budget. Right? Well, the Rentham's a relatively small town. So when it comes to sharing that, those customers aren't all coming from the town of Rentham. So, a restaurant, I hope it's distributed according to lottery, because we don't have as many restaurants as Westboro. So we need that money to come here.
Well, that's one of the questions I have. Because right now, there's really no answer yet as far as how it's going to be done.
Yeah, it's because where it's located has a lot. It's not totally reflective of the community. You take, for instance, the Mass Pike. You got those restaurants on the Mass Pike. They got to be in some town.
Right. What is? Well, you have the mall in Millbury. I mean, we got 5 restaurants there.
That's right.
We're not keeping those.
Those aren't
open.
Right. The town of Millbury. That's right. So, it is a 2-part question. The first part question is, I think, will they be new taxes? I think that's the threshold question. And the second question then becomes, if there is, how is that money going to be distributed? And I don't know if we've gotten to the point where there's a general agreement that there will be new taxes.
Well, there really isn't. I know right now that the Senate's been focused on looking at reforms, and the transportation reform is one example of what we will be trying to do. I know one state agency that I was at an event last week. They talked about how they just received a $20 million cut in their budget without sustaining any layoffs. Well, if you were able to do that, does that mean, was there extra money in there that you didn't really need? So I really do think that we have to look at budgets, make sure that we are spending money efficiently before we even look at any sort of increase in taxes.
That's a really good point, because we know that we work hard to keep the budget as trim as possible, and we know what we've done in our town, but we can't speak with confidence that, say, state government has done the same. We know that there's been cutbacks, and we know that, everybody comes from a different perspective and so forth, but how can we be sure that the state government has done the same? So I think it's great that you will be looking at, have you done all your cutbacks? Have you done it right first?
And we have to have faith in the administration. I mean, when they're bringing the line, we don't oversee, as a town manager, we don't oversee the day-to-day. That's his function. So hopefully that they are ensuring that everything is operating efficiently and they're not spending money on programs that the money shouldn't be spent on, especially in this time of need right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, this past week or so on the news, there was one town where they were first talking about police layoffs, and then they were talking about closing their library in the same town. And then to hear that Fitchburg was thinking it's okay to lay off your police chief. No. It was laying off the police chief where the library was being closed and demoting the lieutenants and captains and sergeants within the police department in Fitchburg. And people, I know everyone's struggling, but what's considered a desperate move? Dismantling public safety in such a way in a place where there's a significant amount of crime. I mean, well, that's all over.
I think that's with the selectmen and the finance committee who will be making recommendations at a town meeting in May. That's what they're going to have to wrestle with, because you've seen my budget filing.
Yes, my eyes were on fire when I opened that book.
And it's a document that is extremely unsatisfactory.
Absolutely, but I'm sure it's unsatisfactory to you too.
Correct.
before we take shots at one
Okay.
another. I know it's unsatisfactory to you.
So as a result, we're going to have to determine, what is the most acceptable unsatisfactory outcome
Right.
that we're willing to tolerate, because there will be no new revenue. We know that. Other than what we can get from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the way of a not as severe reduction. Level funding would be a best case scenario that no one's possibly even discussing.
Yeah.
So we know there'll be a reduction in state aid. Local receipts are down as the Commonwealth's revenues each month. Each month I look at my revenue statement, and it's you get the report as a member of the Finance Committee, and that has not been very impressive at all. We're down all across the board.
April will be a big month for us when you get the filing of taxes and the capital gains. It's truly known what the
That's right.
reductions are.
The motor vehicle numbers are off because new car sales are off. So it's going to have to come. New growth. I'm in for $200,000 new growth, the smallest new growth number during the entire study period. I went back 12 years. I go back a long ways, as you know, in my analysis. So it's going to have to come on the spending side. How much a reduction are people willing to agree relative to the school department? I'm in for a 4.5% reduction on the school budget. School budget last night was presented. They talked about, I think, nearly a 5% increase, and,
Right.
and now they're working their way towards a zero, a flat. The reductions that you and I both find unsatisfactory on the municipal side are all predicated on a 4.5% reduction in school spending. Okay, so if school spending is held level, then what I've shown you is woefully out of balance, and I've got to go in and take another $2 million out of the municipal departments.
Now, we're alluding to an awful lot, and I'm sure people have read in the papers about some of the proposed budget cuts.
Right, and people can read about them by going to our website, shrewsbury-ma.gov, and click on the link, and you'll see the budget
And you'll
filing
see
with
the
all the exhibits.
You'll see the very sad news, because the town manager's proposed, I'm going to say, closing the fire station on Harrington Ave, although you're using words where it'll still be open because the ambulance will be there, and I'm saying it won't have firefighters in the building.
Right.
So that to me is very, very, very concerning, and we'll be having an awful lot
Sure.
of debate on that. So,
I-
we used to think that debate would be interesting every year as people come in with proposals. This is the year there's going to be debate, because people will certainly have opinions as far as where the money should be pulled from. You're talking about layoffs pretty much in every department.
Right. But the alternative would be to move a firefighter out of the fire headquarters and move two into Harrington and just resume the staffing configuration that the town used for many, many years. As you know, as a longtime selectman, at one time there was a situation where there was 36 people in that department, 32 firefighters and 4 captains. That was reduced down to 32, 28 firefighters and 4 captains. I think that reduction took place in the early 90s, I think. So we were able to restore that in the fiscal '04 budget back to where you were prior to 1991. So it's very possible for us just to go with that configuration. The problem we're going to have is we're going to lose that firefighter out of the headquarters that we've grown to view as quite valuable. And in effect, that's going to put a response out of the headquarters, putting the captain back into the response. Right now, with the current staffing configuration, which gives us a 4-2-2 situation, or 4-3-2 when we're up to the 9, which is shown on the staffing chart, which rarely occurs because there's usually someone out on vacation or something like that. But we've grown to really very much appreciate that additional staffing coming out of the headquarters.
Well, I can promise you that the people in Precinct 2 very much appreciate that station being open. So I'm trying to be nice about it, but we will certainly be having discussion about that.
And I know you're trying to be nice about it. I'm just trying
the layoffs
I'm
across the board. Now, that's not your fault. You're not responsible for the economy, but this is a direct result of the economy. But you're talking layoffs in every department. You're talking limiting or as someone retires, not replacing them as a department head and giving more responsibility
That's
to
right.
already busy department heads.
That's right.
And you've come up with some really creative ideas. Some are good, some are debatable, but all of them are disturbing when it comes to laying off any town employee, because
Agreed.
that's not something you've ever wanted.
Everything that I have in that document is disturbing. I think we can agree on that. The one thing we also have to agree on, regardless of how egregious we think it all is, come May 18th, this community will be spending less money in fiscal 10 than it spent in fiscal 9, and that's a reality that people are going to have to come to grips with.
And the other thing we all have to remember, whether it's on a state level or a local level, is that you can't answer the question with another fee or another tax, because the people in the communities are losing their jobs. So there's too many people that are out there in difficult situations trying to hang on. So we need to also keep in mind that we can't just raise taxes to try to satisfy our budget when people are out of work. People are really hurting. Which brings me to a concern I have, not just about layoffs, but about, what are the elderly doing? What are the poor people doing? Are they getting food? Do they, are sick people being attended to as these budget cuts come into place? We need to remember to pay attention to who's in our neighborhoods and who could be vulnerable. We've seen on the news that a man, for whatever reason, didn't have his heat on and he froze to death. Not in Shrewsbury, but that's not something that we'd ever want to see. And so people need to be attentive to their neighbors.
Right. And again, it's going to be very, very difficult. And you're right, every department's going to be affected. I think every one of our employees are going to be affected in some fashion. Every one of our, I would say every one of our, I say most residents, I don't know, there are a few people I think out there that do not have an immediate family member or an extended family member or friend that has not been adversely impacted in the past 4 months with this economy. I have people that I know personally that have been impacted. I'm sure every one of us do.
Yeah, I've got both friends, both of them lost their jobs.
Okay.
They've got a young child. I mean, how are they going to pay for their mortgage?
So, right, so when we look at the reductions that are being proposed in the budget, these are decisions that are going to have to be made. And my job as the manager is to provide options and advice and recommendations, and hopefully the Finance Committee and the Selectmen will do as they always have done in this town, come up with a spending program that, although unsatisfactory, will maintain the core values and the core services of this community, because that's what we've always done.
And giving the towns the options, that is one aspect of the meals tax and even the hotel tax, which I do like. They've got the local option. This way it gives the town manager, the boards of selectmen of the town meeting, the opportunity to look at these options. If they think they can bring in more revenue to do it, then that's up to the community. So I think the legislature has to also look at that, trying to give more autonomy to the towns or the communities.
You brought up that tax again, and all I can think of is the Allen property when I told you need to just set that up with all restaurants. I wasn't off the mark now, because that's where the money's going to be. Yeah. So you should just develop a restaurant row there and see what we can do. But going back to education, you talked about 4.5% cut in their budget this year.
Right.
They were requesting a 5.1% increase?
I don't want to say requesting. I don't think request. I think what they did is they presented to the public if in fact we were going to try and maintain pretty much the program we have right now, it would require that level of investment. I don't believe that they formally said to the public, we want this to be our budget. I don't.
You're right, but that really brings them to more of a 9.6%.
Well, not a cut. What they need to do is they need to modify what they rolled out the other night by 9.6%.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
But I started my numbers much higher than where I am. And in effect, I've cut right down to the chase.
And you've spent a lot of weekends and evenings at Town Hall with those lights going to make these adjustments.
Right. As is, everyone's worked very hard. Department heads have worked very hard. Michael, as always, and the staff. I mean, I've been meeting with the staff, and the staff have been very, very positive. You know, obviously they're disappointed. The employee group's been meeting with the unions. The unions have all been very, very professional. I've been getting fair hearings, as we always get in dealing with our unions. They're very concerned, and we're all going to try and work together and to come up with the best program we can. What isn't going to be helpful is if we get into a situation where we start pitting one department against another.
Right.
And that's never been the Shrewsbury model, and I don't believe that's going to be the case this time around as well.
It's just going to be important to do the right thing as best you can.
Right.
So,
But you're right. I had to make I made a series of recommendations, which some might view as strong or overly aggressive.
Yeah.
And I've done that for a reason, because this is going to be unlike anything we've seen previously. In the past, when we've gone through this, and you're between your tenure as a member of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee, you've been through at least one of these. I've been there since 1978, so I think this might be technically my third time around. In the past, we've sort of viewed these things as, well, this is going to be a dip. You know, we're going to 12 to 18 months, and we're going to resume normal programming. That's not going to be the case here. I'm telling people to prepare for 24 to 30 months. I'm thinking fiscal 13, you know, and before we resume quote-unquote normal programming, and even normal programming in fiscal 13 is not going to look anything like it's looked like in the past.
The revenue projections they gave us said to expect this is part of we're in the second or third year of a possible 7 to 8 year downturn.
All right.
So
there we are. So fiscal 13, before you get any glimmer.
I got to put my glasses on for this. I was reading the New York Times.
So what that means is techniques we've done in the past, reducing hours or shifting, or aren't going to work this time.
Right.
Okay, we need to look at, I think we have to look at this upcoming budget as almost a 2-year, statement of how we're going to proceed. Understanding that obviously we can make adjustments along the line, which is why I move so aggressively in the positions, in the consolidation of some departments, contracting and the like, because it's not just going to be a 1 year, unless I'm sadly, maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong.
We hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong.
Okay.
I hope all the forecasting's wrong.
Right. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I'm terribly far from the mark. So.
I'd like to hope you're wrong. So let's see.
That's good.
Happy thoughts. President Obama was quoted in the New York Times today, and he said, "We don't begrudge anybody for achieving success, and we believe that success should be rewarded. But what gets people upset, and rightfully so, we are executives being rewarded for failure, and especially when those rewards are subsidized by U.S. taxpayers." What do you have to say about that? I'm sure this is all...
I think they should be prosecuted. That's taxpayers' dollars. They knew the intent of the money. The money was to go back, help with the mortgage crisis. It was not to go back and to pay bonuses. I think that's a disgrace, what was done.
I'm the manager. You have to ask me a technical question.
Okay, so
I'll
ask that senator. And along with that, the president was trying to appoint a cabinet and had people who didn't pay their taxes. You've just been elected. You know people look at everything you do very closely, and they scrutinize everything. Who would ever think that they could not pay their taxes?
I don't know. The one question I would have is, did these appointees inform the president that they had this pending issue?
Why should they be an elected official with a pending issue like that? No, I mean, these were all people in elected office. They didn't just fall off the private sector.
Apparently their lives are more complicated than you and I.
Oh, I guess so. But
they have complicated tax questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it just...
You got a question for me?
Okay, question for the manager. Okay.
Are you warming up for Saturday morning?
I think so. I think I've got to
Okay, I'm just checking.
We both need to get a lot of rest because it's going to be
I think you and I are going to have some conversations.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, now, highways. Have you seen any difference with the economy right now? Have you seen a difference in plowing and sanding and salting and preparing the roads, or do you feel that that's something that everybody has kept to the same standard? How's that been?
Truthfully, we're getting more complaints this year than I've seen previously, and I don't know whether people are a little more attuned to it. You know, we've got a little more equipment out there than we've had in the past. The weather's been just horrendous.
It's been bad. It really has.
And we are getting more service complaints, and you know, we really haven't. You know, we really haven't changed our techniques dramatically, but we are getting more inquiry than we've seen previously.
But are we getting more ice storms with the snow?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's weather conditions. I think a lot of people are just tired of it. I mean, that ice storm back in December just knocked the dickens, I think, out of everybody, particularly those people who were out power for a couple of days, and I think people just fed up with it. And but we usually get some inquiries, but I've gotten more feedback this year than I've seen previously.
You know what I notice, and this is my comment, you see people putting a plow on their truck and they think that they're truck drivers. And then they call themselves someone who can drive a plow and plow a road. But they just happen to have a truck with a plow on it, but it doesn't necessarily make them the person who's qualified to do that work. So I think you've got a lot of cowboys out there making money, but yet, and I don't mean just plowing for the town, I mean even doing lots and so forth. And
oh yeah, the lots.
They back out into the road, and it's like, did you realize you're on a main thoroughfare now blocking traffic coming through? Oh, but they've got the plow. So I'm on a high horse on that one too. But you mentioned the ice storm.
It's going to be dangerous coming Saturday.
What is Saturday?
Budget hearing from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Favorite. It really is. Favorite.
I think the two best days of the year.
Exactly.
I mean, for people who are into politics and government and budgets, it's Christmas time.
It's the best time to watch town government because it's all about what the hopes and dreams and plans are, where the department's been, where they're headed.
Every department comes in and basically just throws up on the table and lays it out there.
It's great. And it's all day.
It's an all day thing. We start at 9 in the morning. We go to 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We do it over 2 Saturdays. Something Shrewsbury's done for 100 years.
Yeah.
And it's something I took, when I, me, I never come up with my own ideas. When I left Shrewsbury the first time, I took with me to every town, and they loved it. Initially, I thought it was weird because most finance committees, they meet on Thursday nights or Tuesday nights, something like that. But when you explain it to them, if you meet at 7, by the time you're going at 7:30, by 9 o'clock, people are already, look, I got to go to work in the morning.
Right.
So by coming in for those Saturdays, 9 o'clock, and going the whole day, and you get a rhythm because you're able to put departments together that have similar. So it's really worked, I think, very, very well. It's very informative, very informative. It's something that Mr. Connie started decades ago.
He also threw us another curve this year. He usually has the police department first up, first day, fire department first up, second day.
Right.
He's put them back to back second day. Didn't go unnoticed, just let me tell you.
Let me tell you, I had nothing to do with that.
Oh.
So, see, people give me credit for being smarter than I actually am. Actually, the schedule this year is a little different because of the timing. Some people had to be in different places. So as a result, the department heads sort of switched off with one another. So people sort of ended up getting paired up. Because truthfully, next Saturday is heavy lifting week. I mean, it's all important. But that morning schedule, I believe, is police, fire, and public works.
Yes, it is.
Bing, 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 which actually.
And you called public works the chief too.
Public building. I'm sorry, public buildings.
Public buildings. You put it under chief.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Well.
I read.
Thank you. So right there, you're spending in those 3 departments. We're actually spending over 1/3 to a half of our total municipal budget in those 3 departments. So in a way, it's going to be good because you'll be able to see them back to back. Because there will be those trade-offs you're going to have to talk about. We are again. I'm showing a 4 firefighter reduction in the fire department. I'm showing a 3 patrol officer reduction in the police department. And look what we're doing with public buildings. Public buildings is down 5.5 positions. So highway is down. We got a 10-person highway department. Who was the highway department? When you were selecting, so it's going to be always very interesting, I think very informative.
And the other thing I want you to know, the town manager mentioned the ice storm. Our light department, and I think we were very fortunate because a lot of us were very fortunate to be untouched throughout that
Yes.
ice storm, which goes to the credit of, first and foremost, the light department for doing such a great job, but also a lot of places where trees could have fallen, they were trimmed and kept back.
Aggressive,
So,
aggressive tree trimming programs are very, people are concerned about it, but it's very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have an aggressive tree trimming program.
and that's when you reap the benefit.
Now, one thing to consider too is, I know I read in the paper the other day, and I guess, I hate to say I'm reading it based just like everyone else is in the paper, but now they're talking the stimulus could have money for police staffing. It was in the paper the other day, so.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the other thing we have to consider is the back door stuff, and,
Right.
and making sure that if it comes in the back door, that everyone gets a share in it. So, you know, if the funding comes in, you know, so-called education, you know, we need to understand that somehow that has to be shared throughout the organization.
But if it comes to public safety, I think we have to look at what the purpose is. If it does come from whichever door, I think we need to open the door wide and grab it, because
I'm saying grab, but also
public safety
but
comes
agreed.
first.
But we also need to make adjustments throughout the rest of the organization as a result of that. You know,
I wonder what
issues
the-
like health insurance and Medicare and general insurance. You know, those all support education, or they
Right.
also support public safety. So it doesn't mean, you know, that line item, you know,
it's the only solution.
right, understand that we have an entire spending package here. As you can see, we're already debating. This will go on now for.
But the difference is, I think you can't feel guilty this year, because you're not,
Right.
you know that it's not just you making a decision and us either liking it or not. You're making decisions that we know have to be made. It's the economy. It's not you just
right,
being
that's
Mr.
right.
Conservative or...
That's right. Yeah.
Your budgets always impact lives, but now they really impact lives.
Right.
You've got, you know,
We thought we had a debate before. Now,
Well,
yeah.
you know, I'm in for a reduction in hours on the number of on transportation. You know, we're going to talk about that. You know, virtually every one of the recommendations I've made, and that's why I put it out in tabular form like I did this time around, is impacting people, you know,
One way or
internally and externally, both internally and externally, every one of those recommendations. And as a result, it's going to be a very important period of time.
If you think back to the election, question one was the elimination of the income tax, which they said was going to be devastating, a $12 billion loss to the budget. Well, between the 2.5 that we've already done this year and looking at from 3.5 to 4 next year, we're halfway there. So this is just we actually have a taste of what question one would have accomplished.
I know. That's a good point.
So,
So we have certainly state roads coming through town, and I wondered if you wanted to touch upon anything related to projects. Will they continue? Will the projects that are in process continue to be worked upon, or
As far as we know, yes. I know there's the Route 9 bridge over Queen-Sigament. We've actually checked there, and that's actually part of the accelerated bridge program. That's actually listed on there for that project to begin sometime this year. So that project hasn't even started yet, and that's scheduled to be funded. We still have the $3 billion transportation bond bill that was passed. So hopefully those projects will still be, the Commonwealth will fulfill their obligation and work on those projects. So
they don't take money back once it's funded
Oh,
to
they-
a project? It's safe.
It depends. I think it would depend on where they are in the project. How do you leave a bridge that's half done, or a road or project where it's half completed? I think they would have to evaluate where they are in the project.
Have you heard anything related to Route 9 at all? Or?
No, everything seems to be programmed. In fact, we're going to be starting the Grafton Street project as the weather begins to break. That's a go. That's been funded. I think the government will be, anything dealing with public works, I think the government will do whatever it can to keep those projects going. I think
That was the
they're a
whole
go.
purpose of the stimulus.
They're a go.
Infrastructure, public works projects.
The question is going to be is how much is going to be left for, you know, health care and education and public safety and culture and recreation, libraries. That's really going to be the question. But if it deals with brick and mortar asphalt, those are the projects that they have to go, because those companies and those workers, you know, have to continue to work. and generate the economic activity associated, the spin-off factors of that. I mean, the governor and the president are in, very, very difficult, as anyone who's in a decision-making position, very, very difficult
There's a lot of challenges
choices,
right now.
because you're going to have to make judgments, and you're going to have to choose you benefit or this benefits and this doesn't, and move on. And move on.
We actually still get calls in the office looking for increase in funding for programs.
Right.
And then you'll get a call the next day, and I'm not saying I'm advocating for an increase in taxes or revenues, but then you'll get the same person call the next day saying, well, I want you to oppose this increase. So I've asked my staff, so did he say, how do we pay for this? So in some ways, I actually wonder if the public realizes to what degree the government is actually in right now, as far as the programs that we can offer, and will continue to fund or offer. That might be the only, and I hate to say shining light out of this, is that people might actually see what they're getting for value out of the services that they're getting from the town of Shrewsbury, or from their local government, or from the state government. Sometimes I do think there's a disconnect. People don't realize what they do get from government.
So when someone calls and asks for this increase in funding, do you have a laugh button that you push and just don't even respond, just hit the laugh button? Or?
Well, the group I met with this morning, when they were asking for it, I just told them, I can mislead you or tell you what you want to hear. I said, it's just as the town manager said about level funding. I said, you're going to be lucky if we can maintain level funding for you. I think if you're honest with them, then when reality hits, they can't be misled.
See, I think that's the important thing, and that was the logic behind my budget filing, in addition what the board wanted to see, is get something out there that is the bottom, and telling people that, okay, we're going to move to try to improve this. I think the mistake that a lot of people have been making is this constant rollout of bad news. We were told that it was $350 billion top, then the banking industry would be saved.
Right.
Well, then we're told, well, we need another. Now we need another $350 billion, and now we're told we need, and I think that's a mistake. I think the governor needs to come out and the legislature and say, look, this is the number, and not continually have this rollout situation where, oh, it's $1 billion, no, it's $1.5 billion, now it's $2 billion, because that's giving mixed signals, and people.
It's actually funny. I was talking to a friend of mine today who's in the financial industry, and we were discussing that, how the media can play into the whole economy. Just hearing always the bad news, the revenues are coming down, the economy's good, it causes people not to spend money. People become afraid. So I think that's a very good point.
Just come out once, be done with it, and then let people deal with it. People can deal with things when they know what the story is. Where it's difficult is when they think they're only getting 80% of the story, so they're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
And that freezes everybody, because, oh, gee, things may improve. The governor's tax program may, you know what I'm saying? Let's just get there, and then let's start making some decisions, and then start having contingency plans in the event things improve. But let's start making some initial judgments and evaluations as to how we're going to deal with the situation, and not say, well, let's put it off for 2 weeks while we wait, to hear what House Ways and Means is going to do. Well, House Ways and Means isn't we're hoping for an early local aid resolution.
Right.
If the House Ways and Means doesn't come out until April, Easter vacation, I mean, my goodness, that's halfway through the town meeting season for most people.
Yeah,
so we're going to need it. When was Millbury's town meeting?
First Tuesday in May.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so if they, if you get your initial local aid number from House Ways and Means, during April vacation, what's
yeah.
that? 3 weeks? It's.
But it is difficult.
We
right
need an
now.
early resolution.
Oh, and I agree. And I think everyone in the legislature would love to
Sure.
give the cities and towns an early resolution. But when
The unknown.
that unknown
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, that's true.
You live in Millbury, and Millbury has the benefit of the shopping center and Wheelabrator,
Yes.
right? It's two big taxpayers for.
Yes. Yeah, the main taxpayers in town.
Now, as businesses are affected in that Millbury shopping center, I don't know, I imagine they must be just like everywhere else.
Well, I know Circuit City is now closing.
Right.
We've had Bombay. I think they've gone out of the
They're
mall.
out of the mall
They're
in
out of the mall.
Solomon, too.
Yeah, so I think they've gone. It's actually funny because if you go to the mall, the traffic flow in and out of the mall is still,
Yes, it's unbelievable.
It's busy.
I've been over there a
Well,
few times. It's
it's-
unbelievable.
yeah.
It looks like you got half the police force there
Yeah.
on a Friday night directing traffic.
Well, they hire, for the details, they hire from Sutton, Grafton, the
Okay.
surrounding towns,
Yeah.
just to backfill
To staff it.
the staff there.
We're mall walkers now because of the cold weather.
Oh, okay.
And so we walk at Solomon Pond. And on any weeknight, you can go in that mall and just zoom right down. It's a great,
Oh, really?
oh,
Business
no one.
is that poor?
Business is so poor that you could just walk down the whole
I haven't-
strip
I
and
haven't
not
been
run
down
into
there.
anybody. It's
I
like a
have not-
ghost
I
town.
haven't either, yeah.
And we were commenting how we really hope the mall stays open so that we can have a place to walk in the
Oh,
cold
boy.
weather. I mean, that's how concerning it is. And then come Saturday and Sunday, you'll see more people in the mall, but you don't see a lot of bags. You don't see a lot of people spending. You just see people there. And then come Monday, it's very, very quiet.
Well, again, I think it goes with the Senator said. I think everyone, people who have jobs, waiting for the quarter to end, everyone knows that as these companies announce their quarter, if the quarter's bad, they have to make an announcement to pop their stock. So what they normally do is say, yes, our quarter was bad, but we've just reduced our costs by X, Y, and Z. And I think that's what everyone is. Everyone is waiting to see what happens over these next 6 months as we learn how these companies handled the last quarter in 2008 and the first and second quarter. Even the most optimistic economists see nothing until the end of 2009.
But we're basing the budget next year on $19.5 billion.
Okay, you got 23, was it?
Right. That's an optimistic projection. I mean, there are some who are predicting could be under 19. And out of that 19.5 billion, 14.5 of it is mandatory spending that has to be in place. So, I mean, you can call it discretionary spending, but that's each person's opinion. But so they're only left with $5 billion. So if it goes down below 19 billion, you don't know what cuts would have to be made next year. And hopefully, like as the manager said, maybe everyone's wrong and the revenues will increase, and we can help bring back some funding.
How many times do you recall that the state didn't pay their employees for a week or two, and the employees went without pay? I remember that happening in was it the 70s or the 80s?
I remember that. I remember furloughs. I remember in the early
Furloughs,
90s when Weld first came in as governor.
2001,
Yeah, he established a furlough
2002,
program, yeah, based on your salary, determined how many furlough days you had to take.
Right.
Well, I think I remember the people at UMass one time not being paid for a week or two.
I'm not,
It was just held back for whatever reason.
for cash flow, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's all sorts of things that we've experienced. And
Yeah.
anyways, to go on to...
And again, I think we have to use all those experiences, and
Yeah.
I think members of the Selectmen and Finance Committee, town meeting members who have been around and been through these cycles are going to need to talk about experiences and what they're, how things break and improve. And I think it's very, very important. And
People are going to have to be innovative in this. Town managers, unions, everyone's going to have to, as the manager said, if everyone works together, we can get through this. And that's the key thing, if everyone is willing to work together. And I think Obama said that in his inaugural speech.
Right.
The people, to overcome these challenges, if everyone works together, we can get through this. And that's going to be the key.
Do you see anything outstanding with the change? I mean, it's your first year, but with the change in leadership in the Senate, do you see anything being traveled down a different path? I know one is the casino gambling.
Well, actually, I think that depends, again, whether it will come from the House. And I'm not really sure where the Speaker now, DeLeo, stood on that issue.
Okay, I'm mixing people up, sorry.
Senator Murray is
Right,
in the Senate.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm-
No, that's fine.
And she was rather critical, I think, of the governor's budget presentation. Making a presentation on House 1 based upon assumed taxes.
Right.
That did not go over well in the Senate, from what I gather.
No, it didn't. So, and I will say this, the swearing-in speech that she gave to open the session, it was really based on reform, looking at how government provides our services. So if she follows through, which I'm sure she will, on the agenda that she's established, I think you will see from the Senate's point of view, we are going to be really looking at how we do provide services.
One thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is Representative Polito has had some articles in the paper about ed reform and relief bill that she's put forward, and one topic that she presents in her points is the SPED transportation and the costs, if it would be reimbursable, the cost being reimbursable to the towns. We have a lot of SPED transportation billed to Shrewsbury, and so that really caught my attention, and I don't know if you have gotten far enough into it to know if that could be something that is realistic.
I think we really have to wait to see what comes out of the House budget.
Out of the House.
Whether they look at even adopting it into the budget. Well, I think it's going to depend on the formulas. We actually met with the town of Auburn and the Department of Revenue last week because they were questioning the formula used for Chapter 70.
Okay.
So, and they were.
Are they in an effort, low effort or high effort state right now?
Actually, they were in a high effort.
Okay.
The DOR, basically, when they readjusted the formula a few years ago,
Right.
they realized that some communities were not getting the amount that they should have been getting.
Right, based on effort.
And so Auburn, they were actually trying to gradually each year increase their Chapter 70.
Okay.
And basically, what they're saying now is, even though the state knows they should be receiving more money, they're not going to be able to fulfill it. Yet some communities, they didn't want to penalize communities a few years ago when they did the formula and reduce them in their Chapter 70 money. They just kept them level funded. So
The whole town. Well, we're on the other end of that switch. So Westboro is another community. So, yeah.
So I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about that piece.
No, look, it's the whole. I think one of the things that Representative Polito was talking about is studying the whole special education, the whole question of special education, and the impact that has. You know, we have a population that needs these services, and communities are doing the best they can. But obviously, a lot of money is being spent, very expensive, very, obviously very important work. But we're doing so many other things. But everyone's got that same story. So every constituency group that you meet with says basically the same thing, and it's all good ideas, and it goes back to my budget filing. What I have filed is an unsatisfactory product, and
say that again.
And we just need to decide, what is going to be the most, what's the acceptable unsatisfactory outcomes.
Yeah. Well, our hour has flown by.
it can go by quick.
Yes, and we'd like to thank you for being with us
Yep.
today.
Good luck
my
to you.
pleasure.
And
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you and your staff.
Likewise.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Great, thank you.